Greetings everybody, my name is BB28 Bombers, and today, in episode 2 of AP Lore, we are going to be examining a play of the renowned Arthur Miller. The play is All My Sons, and it takes place following the conclusion of the Second World War in August of 1947. One of the main points of the play is to examine the deteriorating relationship of a father and son that is ruined. The play is centered along a mother who mourns the loss of her son who was lost at war. Her name is Kate Keller, and she believes her son Larry, who is presumed dead or missing in action, is actually alive. There's a deeper plot underlying here, which I will explain. Next up is Joe Keller, a man who ran a company during the war that was investigated for selling defective cylinder heads to the Army for use in planes. His partner, Steve Deaver, was arrested for the selling of these parts, but Joe is held as innocent, and found innocent by a jury of his peers. His son, Chris Keller, believes that his father is a great man who he is able to look up to and respect both as a businessman and as a great person. But here's the kicker. You see, Kate Keller believes her son to be alive because while he was a pilot in the war, there were cylinder heads, according to the Keller family, that were not cracked when they sold them. Except the truth is that they did sell these cracked cylinder heads. Keller had his partner, Steve Deaver, cover up the cracks of paint and ship them off, unaware of the aerial problems it would cause. Now, deep down, Kate and Joe know that Joe sold these defective parts, and that, because they were defective, their son Larry had a possible malfunction that could have killed him while he was flying somewhere during the war. However, this isn't the truth, as Larry felt guilty and ended his life at sea. But Joe still has sold these parts, which is revealed in Larry's letter before his death to Ann Deaver, whom Chris Keller is planning to marry. So that seems like a lot, but basically what happened is this. Larry Keller found out about his father's actions in causing the deaths of some pilots by selling defective airplane parts, and overcome by grief and guilt for his father's actions, Larry unfortunately ends his life at sea. In the end of the play, however, Joe finds the guilt that he feels to be inescapable, and he takes his own life as well. The guilt of allowing the deaths of 21 pilots without any outspoken remorse is too much for him to handle, and the pain he has caused both his sons, Larry and Chris, and all of the pilots who he's found to be his own children in a sense, his family, and numerous other families finally make him face the truth. In the end, he even remarks to Kate that these men who died truly were all his sons. Now, as a side note before we begin, I have mentioned numerous times already that there were 21 pilots whose planes fell out of the sky due to the negligence of the company and Joe himself. These 21 pilots, in a way, are still around today. Believe it or not, the famous band 21 Pilots gained inspiration for the name of their band from Miller's play. Just an interesting fact. Now, going back to the main storyline of this play, Steve Deaver's son, George, has long since his father's arrest tried to get the truth from anyone about what really happened. He eventually comes to the Keller household looking to prove that Joe Keller is just as responsible, if not the ringleader of the crime, as his father Steve, for the cracked cylinder heads. Following the welcoming and calming attitudes of Kate, Joe, and Chris, and even Ann, his own sister, he finally gives up and, defeated, he leaves the home, without any justice for his father, without any further truth that could possibly be told about this case. However, this is not before a close call between Kate and Joe, as Kate remarks that Joe has been healthy for the longest time, even during the war. Joe claims he was sick with pneumonia during a time in the war, which allowed for him to be conveniently out of the office the day the cracked cylinder heads were shipped out, thus serving as an excuse to get out of trouble. This lapse of memory between both Kate and Joe leads suspicion from George, and George, in a sense, tries to call them out on their lies. However, they deny everything, and eventually, George has had enough and decides to leave. Now, it's obvious in this case that both Joe and, of course, Kate are lying in this situation. Suspiciously, this detail slips the mind of Kate, and George calls them out for it, and they eventually get into a heated argument before he's eventually quelled by their calming attitudes. He claims that they are liars, that Joe looked to pin the blame on Steve Deaver for the parts, rather than take the responsibility for his actions. Here, the Kellers hold out their innocence, and angrily, George leaves, without the support of his sister. Eventually, following some more plot details, especially Larry's letter, it's revealed that Joe really did do the crime. The play does not end with his arrest, however. Now that we are all caught up, let's go over the sentence that he would have received, how he would have been taken to court, and of the vindication or condemnation of his partner in crime. For one thing, we first need to consider the magnitude of what he has done. He sent defective parts, with, however, no intent to kill, to the US Army for young men to fly through the air. In total, this was the cause of 21 deaths, which would certainly receive a long sentencing in court. But just how long is this sentencing? Let's find out. We need to first recognize that there was no malicious intent or motive to kill or harm or injure any of the pilots who flew the planes of cracked cylinder heads during the war. However, this is an afterthought after considering that these cylinder heads were the probable cause of their deaths, barring any other obstructions in the planes or in the air that resulted in the deaths of these pilots. So, currently, Joe sits with 21 counts of murder in the second degree, of course, with no malicious intent. Joe even said numerous times when pleading with Chris that he didn't know that they would cause such a catastrophe, but even then, he still sent the parts out. This negligence could come back to bite him. Let's explain more. Now, murder in the second degree nets someone between at least 10 and 25 years in prison. When we take the least of this and multiply by 21 for each pilot that died, we get a minimum sentence of 210 years in prison. When we take the most of this and multiply by 25, however, we get an astounding 525 years in prison. The average male in the United States in 1947 lived to be only 64.7 years old, and Joe, while definitely older than this in the events of the play, still would not last any prison sentence to begin with. With the average lifespan, and the worst sentence so far of course, he would need 8.11 lives to live to serve all that time. Let's hope Joe's a cat and has 9. Meanwhile, we currently have a minimum sentence of 210 years and a max of 525. Now we need to examine another factor to this crime: negligence. Negligence is what happens when a person could have prevented something that has happened that results in the death of people. Negligence is often caused by people not knowing what they are doing, such as leaving a child in the car on a hot day. According to some sources, there isn't a necessary timetable for prison time following a crime that is sentenced for negligence, but often there is a maximum prison sentence of 10 years, so we will use this as our guideline. Now, Joe and Steve both sent out airplane parts, knowing there was possibility of a catastrophic malfunction, and although they could have stopped it, they did not. This negligence, of course, causes 21 deaths, and based on this math, with 10 years per crime committed, this would net Joe Keller another 210 years in prison, meaning that his new minimum sentence is a combined 420 years and 735 years at a maximum. Now, if you have read the play like I have, you may know that Joe Keller has been in court for this case before. Joe Keller was also known during this court case to proclaim his innocence when on the stand, defending himself and claiming that he took no part in the heinous crimes of his company and of his partner. Of course, he lied, which means that he has lied under oath and committed perjury. This means that he has also falsely testified, and that Steve Deaver's prison sentence may bear some of the penalty that Joe should have worn himself. And what are the penalties for that? At the minimum, perjury will get you 1 year in prison, but considering all that Joe is guilty of, another 5 years won't hurt, which is a common sentence for this crime. So, perjury will net him another 5 years in prison, meaning that Joe either has 425 or 740 years behind bars. now. Let us imagine that instead of 21 pilots being killed, there was only one. What would that sentence be? If not for a life sentence or capital punishment, Joe Keller's indictments and his crimes would net him at least between 25 and 50 years in prison. And with Keller's old age, at approximately his mid-60s, or maybe even his early 70s, it is hard to imagine that he would even survive this long in prison, considering it's 1947. But remember, this is for one person's death, and he indirectly killed 21. Now, I am sure that there are still a multitude of possible other crimes that can be appended to this sentence, but I think we'll leave it at 740 years. Of course, they could sentence him to a life sentence or even the death sentence for his actions, but for justice, they would likely let him sit in prison for 740 years. And remember what I said earlier about the average lifespan of a male in 1947? It's 64.7. And when 64.7 is divided into 740, well, Joe Keller would need to live 11.44 times. That's right, 11.44 lifetimes of being around 65 years old to go through all 740 years of his prison sentence. What a sentence. Case dismissed. Order into court. Hi, it's BB28 Bombers again. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video and enjoy more videos like these ones, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Episode 3 will come out sometime in the next week, likely. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.